We are today, January 22nd, 2024. We are under the new 47th President of the United States.
And we're bringing joy and resistance.
I really don't care for the fuck around and find out sort of news coverage. I
No,
don't think it's very
it's not helpful.
productive to spend time dunking on what American people, regardless of their political standing, are losing under this administration.
There are qualified people running. They need money. They need fundraising. So I'm like, okay, let's go get y'all some money because I can't deal with that man again. Basically, like the Democratic primary in New York decides who's the mayor, essentially. So everybody, even if you're not a Democrat, as long as you're left of liberal, you run under that.
Maybe
So,
he's probably emboldened now with Trump
oh,
and believing that, like, as a black man, that sort of watch white work will transpose onto him. But this is going to be a very interesting election.
I think so. And he was actually, speaking of him and Trump, he was at Mar-a-Lago last week, Eric Adams. Like, what does that have to do with the citizens of New York, sir? Nothing. Nothing. We cannot raise the degrees higher than 1.5 degrees, and we have officially hit that. So that sounds off a huge alarm bells of like, oh, you're going to now see extreme weather. Extreme weather is climate change. It should not be snowing in Houston right now.
What happens when we're all just suffering under extreme weather?
We're about to see basically climate refugees. We'll be like the first generation that where that is a normalized term for something that is completely abnormal. Even if you owned your home outright and you lived in the home for 30 years, you cannot afford the insurance on the home. And they're doing that in the hopes of that
A white South African man.
Apartheid's favorite son, if we're going to be very specific. Yes.
Exactly.
Yes.
Getting on that stage and doing what is like, come on, there's like,
he slapped his chest and raised his hand up,
and he does it more than once,
held down, and it ignited a firestorm.
The ADL, since October 7th, has embraced lots of white supremacists, such as Elon Musk. They have literally championed having a former Klan member and white supremacist pastor at their pro-Israel march. The ADL's mandate now is just to stomp out any support for Palestine. That's all they're doing now. So they are literally allowing anti-Semitism to run rampant, which is objectively wild and dangerous. Not only for themselves, for their constituents, and for the rest of us. Interestingly enough, because Trump and his team sued for immunity because he did not want to be held liable for January 6th, and SCOTUS in that Supreme Court case gave all presidents now have unlimited immunity, which has never existed before.
An indigenous activist who was sentenced to 2 life terms in 1975 over the supposed murder of, I believe, FBI agents. Leonard Peltier is granted clemency and was sentenced to like indefinite house arrest.
This is objectively wild because what's not being said in these articles, and it was said a couple weeks before when Biden started issuing his pardon, he pardoned a lot of very awful people.
All federal employees in diversity, equity, initiative roles or inclusion roles have to be put on paid leave by 5 p.m. January 22nd. That is today.
They're going to get rid of all of the DEI bias training that has been rolled out over the years, which that training is needed on a base level. It needs to be updated every other month, to be honest, because people find new ways to aggress their coworkers. Civil rights law is done. In the corporate sector, about 70 to 75% of these new DEI roles are run and have been run by white women. White women have been the number one beneficiary of DEI.
I am honored to be chosen by President Trump to lead the EEOC, our nation's premier civil rights agency enforcing federal employment anti-discrimination laws, Lucas said. I look forward to restoring even-handed enforcement of employment civil rights laws for all Americans. In recent years, this agency has remained silent in the face of multiple forms of widespread overt discrimination. Consistent with President's executive orders and priorities, my priorities will include rooting out unlawful DEI-motivated race and sex discrimination, protecting American workers from anti-American national origin discrimination, defending the biological and binary reality of sex and related rights, including
What she's
women's
saying is literally
rights
legal.
to single-sex spaces at work. The trans bathroom issue is
Mm-hmm.
back on the clock.
Mm-hmm.
Protecting workers from religious bias and harassment, including anti Semitism, and remedying other areas of recent under enforcement. Our employment civil rights laws are a matter of individual rights. We must reject the twin lies of identity politics. That justice is measured by group outcomes, and the civil rights exist solely to remedy harms against certain groups.
How are you going to get career government employees that particularly work in a department that is supposed to be for protecting civil rights to all of a sudden comply
And what
with this? Like, you
happens?
cannot fire everybody and rehire just white supremacists. A lot of the things that he's trying to do and that he's proposing are currently unconstitutional and illegal. So I'm curious, because he can't do everything simultaneously at the same time. They are going to get, and they've already kicked off, the ACLU has kicked off some of it, a huge string of lawsuits. As an anchor baby myself, my parents got their paperwork years after I was born. Way later. Way later. My grandmother finally became a citizen when I was in law school. She was like, okay, I guess I'll do it now.
They are attempting to change who is considered a citizen, and that just comes with a whole suite of implications.
What Trump quietly, and what I think he'll be known for long after, and his team really famously did, was when he was the president in 2016, he filled so many federal court benches. And therefore, there are so many blocks of right wing Trump supporting, even though you're supposed to be unbiased as a federal judge, lifetime appointment judges. The Supreme Court is basically unconstitutionally ruling, oh yeah, you can have full immunity for anything. That is not constitutional.
One White House print reporter told CJR, there have been fewer eyeballs on the press briefings, less attention than under Trump. So people don't understand some of the very frustrating things we've dealt with and that we hope are going to be rolled back. And I think that was interesting in particular because they are attempting to use Biden's own distrust of the media, Biden's own lack of engagement, historical lack of engagement with the media, to say, look, we're not hiding.
I think their goal is to make everyone so tired so that way you resist less. So fighting apathy, I think, is something that we will collectively have to. It's not because I'm an aging man who is approaching his 80s. And when you age, your body changes. That's normal. Because people like his Nazism, his white supremacy, all of his awful things, I think they'll let him be an old crotchety man.
This article from Public Books by Austin McCoy was a very interesting read where they are breaking down, I don't know what is considered a long read. This does take like 15 minutes to read, but they are breaking down how rap beefs are really sort of in part manufactured because they are financially beneficial to the corporations. A lot of money is to be made as a function of capitalism from rap beefs, regardless of the deterrent towards real living people, regardless of how they harm and engage with real living people. Questlove claimed the beef's lack of skill and trading of low blows suggested that hip hop was truly dead.
The NFL is a huge corporation that loves to use Black culture when they feel like it to make some bucks, and then loves to chastise Black culture when they're like, no, don't kneel. Y'all don't need rights. Y'all need to make me some money. Do you want to make coins? Explaining our culture to people who don't respect it, don't get it, and honestly could have lived without understanding it.
But really, it is the tech companies that benefit because then their back catalogs get played and they're not really paying the artists much, but they are collecting so much by drumming up, by promoting the beef.
It's interesting how we all use capitalism when it benefits us, when we, maybe should dig a little deeper.